to welcome back my favorite guest, the foremost and most knowledgeable, best prepared spokesperson on the nature of the Islamic religion, IQ al-Rassooli. If you are to Google Lifting the Veil, the True Faces of Muhammad and Islam, or IQ al-Rassooli, you'll find his books. The only difference between IQ's books, Lifting the Veil, and Prophet of Doom, my book chronicling the Hadith and Quran of Muhammad, is that IQ has organized his material by topic, and in Prophet of Doom, all of the Islamic scriptures are ordered chronologically and set into the context of Muhammad's life. The outcome for a reader who considers either is identical, that Islam is the most caustic political and religious dogma that has ever been perpetrated on humankind, also the most violent and destructive. With that introduction, IQ, it's always my pleasure to have you be part of this program.
Thank you for having me, sir.
There's a poll, IQ, that was taken this past week in the United States and also in Britain. The poll says that 26% of younger Muslims in America believe that suicide bombings are justified, and 35% of young Muslims in Britain also believe that suicide bombings are justified. Let's just use a combined number and say 30% of young Muslims think that suicide bombings are justified. Is there any place in the Quran and Hadith that speak of suicide?
No.
No. Is there any place in the Quran or Hadith?
May I interrupt you? In fact, in Hadith, Muhammad prohibits suicide, and he says that the one who commits suicide by any manner, like if he blows himself up in a mission, he will forever be reborn, blown up, reborn, blown up for eternity. No suicide.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. It's interesting, but let's put this in context because it's really interesting. The only reason that suicide comes up in the Hadith is because there was one of Muhammad's militants. He was a particularly vicious man, but a very effective belligerent. And when Muhammad ordered him to participate in one of his terrorist raids, in the midst of that terrorist raids, he was gravely wounded. And he was in such agony, and he knew that there was no chance that he was going to recover from his wounds. So rather than just continue to spend the next 2 or 3 days in complete agony, and now again, he's in agony because Muhammad ordered him out in a terrorist raid, he took his own life. That's my recollection of the only time Muhammad brings up suicide. And so Muhammad's followers, other participants in this raid, came to him and said, you know, your most devoted barbarian, your most devoted jihadist, a guy that's participated and been the most ruthless in these raids, was severely injured and he took his own life. What do you have to say about that, Muhammad? And Muhammad then said of this man who had followed Muhammad's orders to commit terror, that he was now in hell and Allah was torturing him, and that if any of you take your own life like this, you too are going to receive the kind of treatment that he is now receiving. Is that also correct?
Absolutely correct. Spot on.
Yeah. So what Muhammad was saying is that I'm so intent on you killing and terrorizing and robbing on my behalf that you will continue to kill and rob and terrorize until you can no longer move, and I don't care how much agony you are in based upon my instructions, you are never to take your own life. To kill and continue to kill until you can no longer kill. Is that fair?
Putting it mildly, yes, it is fair.
All right. So, therefore, suicide bombing is not advocated in the Quran. Now, terrorism is. Would that be correct? So, the Quran does order Muslims to be terrorists. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, Muhammad said that Allah made him victorious story is through terror. So, I mean, you can't add to it more than this. It's impossible.
Right. So being a terrorist is not only the ultimate good in Islam, but it's if you're going to follow Muhammad's example, you have to be a terrorist. But killing yourself as a terrorist is not permitted. So this is kind of interesting that 30% of young Muslims have been duped by their imams to believe that suicide bombing is appropriate in Islam, when in fact, according to Muhammad, it isn't.
This is why you will never find any single case of an imam, a mullah, or a scholar of Islam committing suicide, because they know it's prohibited. But they let those idiots, I call them idiots because they have to be idiots.
You have to be an idiot.
By the way, the reason they commit suicide is not for Islam. They don't do it for Allah. They do it for the 72 virgins in Muhammad's whorehouse version of paradise.
That is correct. That is correct. In fact, every imam, we know what the imams are saying because there are suicide bombers that fail. And the suicide bombers that are failed are always interrogated and said, why were you doing this? And they all tell the exact same story. They say, the imam told me that I was so ugly, so unattractive, so much of a failure as a person that I would never find a girl to make love to, much less to marry. And that my only hope of ever having any satisfaction with a girl was to kill myself as a suicide bomber, because I would go directly to Allah, and then Allah would give me the 72 virgins. And so they wrap their private parts with gauze while they put on their suicide vests, so that they can go and have sex with 72 virgins. That's why they do it.
That's the only reason, by the way. I mean, it really sounds ridiculous that you and I mentioned these things. But it's a fact, it's a reality. And yet people ignore it. Yes.
Yeah, completely ignore it. They make it sound like a suicide bombing is a political response of an oppressed minority, and that it's just the way that you would commit guerrilla warfare. But that's not true. The suicide bombers are doing it because their imam lied to them and told them, you're so ugly, the only chance you ever have to make love is to, and it's not really love, to have sex, is if you blow yourself up killing others. But there's a second aspect of this poll, though, IQ, that is also worth us discussing. Virtually 100% of suicide bombs, not 100%, maybe 90% of suicide bombs, they are designed to kill civilians, women and children, fellow Muslims. And in the vast majority of cases, it's fellow Muslims, but it's almost always innocent civilians, and almost 100% of the time it's unarmed individuals. Can you imagine a religion so warped that you think that killing someone who you don't know, who is unarmed, and in most cases women and children, is justified?
Yes, Muhammad justified it again and again. What was Muhammad? Did he ever fight a military organization? Never.
Never once.
The attacks, 60 or 70 of them, it was civilians.
Right. And it was always civilians because the purpose of his terrorist raids had nothing to do with a political objective. It had nothing to do with a religious objective. The entire purpose of all 75 terrorist raids that Muhammad either led or ordered was to rob the victims. That was it.
Plunder and booty and rape and enslavement and terrorism. That's it.
Well, but if you take those first few things, and you and I have studied, I have read everything that was written within 200 years of Muhammad's death about the 75 terrorist raids that he led or ordered. And what you find is that those terrorist raids were all perpetrated for exactly the same reason. For plunder, which is robbery. For rape, which is a means to reward the robber. Or for kidnapping, which is for financial means, because they were always kidnapped and ransomed, or for enslaving the children, which was a form of remuneration. So all of this was done for economic reasons, that Islam was born on an economy of terror for the purpose of taking what didn't belong to the Muslims and and enriching the Muslims based upon stealing from others.
But this has been continuing for 1400 years. Nothing has changed. Today, when you look at Syria, are they really killing each other for political and religious reasons? Not at all. They're robbing people. They are raping women. They are enslaving other people. 21st century Arabs and Islam is exactly the same thing as it was 1400 years ago. Nothing has changed.
Yeah. Yes, the jihadists that are engaging in Syria, while they will all speak about the religious crusade of establishing the caliphate and of the pure Islam, whether they be Sunni or Shiite, warring with each other, they'll all speak of it as Allah's cause. But where the rubber meets the road, where jihadists and their AK-47 engage, it's all about plundering the victim and raping those that survive. And that's.
But this is why they are doing it to the Christians. They have no more Jews. They plundered the Jews already. They murdered, raped, and confiscated their land. There are no Jews in Arabia. There are no very, 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 very few Jews in the whole of the Muslim world. So the only people they have to pick on now, or they can pick on, are the Christians.
Right.
And yet, Western Europe and America are doing nothing, absolutely nothing, to protect these.
Yeah, one of the things that became evident to me as I put the Quran in chronological order using the Hadith, which are all reports from Muhammad and his companions, is that Muhammad overhunted Jews. You take the first 3 Jewish communities in Yathrib, which is now Medina, where Muhammad was fled in shame after the satanic verses. The first one he expelled out into the desert to die, so he could steal all of their property. The next 2, he killed the men, he raped the women, and he enslaved the children while confiscating their property. The first of the villages that he attacked in Yathrib, it formed a farming community in Kabar on his way back from his failed attempt to conquer Mecca. He satiated his jihadist lust and rage and covetousness by allowing them to terrorize and plunder Kabar. But after that, there were no more Jews. He had overhunted them. And so what you find is that there's a transition from the first of the Yathrib Medina surahs, which began as an anti-Semitic rant against Jews. That's the second surah. By the time you hit the 9th and the 5th surah, the 9th being the second to the last revealed, and the 5th being the last, something changes that is profound in the nature of Allah's revelation to Muhammad. And we'll speak about that after the commercial break. Welcome back to Shattering Myths. We're having a conversation with al-Rassooli. He is the author of Lifting the Veil, The True Faces of Muhammad and Islam. And in the last segment, IQ made a statement that said that Muslims, the first Muslims to follow Muhammad, had overhunted Jews, had robbed them and raped them and enslaved them and murdered them to the point of extinction, and they needed to find additional prey. And that is why today Muslims seek out to kill Christians. There's actually more to the story, and there's a basis of the story, IQ. That's what I was heading towards as we led into the break. The Quran, if you order it chronologically, the last 2 surahs are the 9th and then the 5th. The 5th surah redefines Allah's enemy. It's no longer Jews. According to the 5th surah, Allah's enemy are Christians. That's what the 5th surah conveys. And then the 9th surah, the one preceding it, it defines a good and bad Muslim. And it tells us that if you're a Muslim and you don't engage in jihad, you don't actively support jihad, which is armed conflict against all of Allah's enemies, then you cease to be a Muslim. Which means that it's impossible to be a peaceful or moderate Muslim.
This is exactly what I tell Americans in every radio station that I've been on, that it is impossible to have a moderate Muslim, that no American Muslim, no Muslim in America can ever be loyal to the American people, because the American people are considered to be infidels, kuffar or kafirun, and cannot obey the American Constitution because it is not from Allah. It's not from Sharia, and hence it is unacceptable. And people think I'm crazy. They think I'm the extremist.
But all you have to do, I mean, if you were just to read the 9th and the 5th surahs, it's over. I mean, that's all you have to do. Your point is, that's not your opinion. It's what the 9th surah and the 5th surah of the Quran say. The 9th surah of the Quran says it is impossible to be a peaceful or moderate Muslim, that all Muslims have to be jihadists, and that if a Muslim ceases to be a jihadist, then that it is the only solution for that is for a good jihadist Muslim to kill them, so that Allah can personally attend to their torture in the hottest places in hell.
I would like to rephrase it. The minute a Muslim is not a jihadi, he is not a Muslim anymore.
That's what it says.
He is an infidel, then he is subject to the same death, destruction, plunder as the other people.
Right. The term that, at least translated into English, of a non-jihadist Muslim is that they are no longer a Muslim, they are now a hypocrite. And a hypocrite means they're just pretending to be a Muslim. According to Allah, they're no longer a Muslim. Now, while Allah is not God, Allah was modeled after Satan, and Allah is really Muhammad's alter ego. So none of this is true. What matters is, this is what Muslims believe. In the Quran, if you're going to define a good and bad Muslim, you have to use the Quran's definition. And the Quran's definition in the 9th surah is any Muslim who is not a jihadist, is not engaged in armed conflict against all the world. Peaceful Muslims against Christians and Jews, that person becomes a hypocrite and ceases to be a Muslim. So you can't have a peaceful Muslim. It is absolutely impossible to be a peaceful or moderate Muslim.
That's why I have not had a single Muslim scholar, faqih, mullah, imam, come against me in a debate. And I don't think anyone will come against you in a debate. No. They avoid you and I, they will avoid us forever.
Right.
Because they know
forever.
that within minutes we can destroy them. Within minutes, not even hours.
Right. But the issue here is just so important, because every media outlet, everyone, every politician, everyone in the media who speaks of Islam says that the terrorists are radicalized. But they're not radicalized, they're fundamentalists. The opposite of what is being reported in the media is true.
You are absolutely right. The most perfect Muslim ever existing after Muhammad was Osama bin Laden. The most perfect Muslim. The Taliban are perfect Muslims. They're not radical.
Right.
There are no shades in Islam. It is so fundamental that Americans understand this. There are no shades in Islam. You know what Erdogan of Egypt, of Turkey said? Erdogan, I didn't say that, he said it.
Right.
He said it is garbage talk when you speak about moderate Muslims. Muslims are Muslims.
Period.
What does he mean?
Yeah, right. Because what he knows is the 9th surah of the Quran states that the moment you become moderate, you cease to be a Muslim. That's according to Allah. So this whole argument that there are good moderate Muslims who are peaceful, and it's only a small minority who are radicalized, who become terrorists, the opposite of that is true. Which means everyone in the media, every politician is lying. They're fighting a war against a farce, against a myth, against a lie. All of those lives lost for nothing. Back to Shattering Myths. We're here with al-Rassooli, the world's foremost expert on the nature of Islam. IQ, realizing that according to the Quran, that there is no such thing as a moderate or peaceful Muslim, that all Muslims must be jihadists, and jihad is only defined as armed conflict against all of Allah's enemies, which would be any moderate or peaceful Muslim, any Christian, any Jew, or any atheist or agnostic, which would be the entire world's population apart from fundamentalist Islamic jihadists. Are we not making the problem worse when politicians declare a war against an outfit like al-Qaeda and pretend that it is just this corruption of Islam that is the enemy?
That's why America is losing the war. That's why the West is losing the war. Because they're not identifying the enemy. In fact, they're protecting the enemy by saying there are radical Muslims.
So what you're saying is, in fact, that America's invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan and our bombing of Libya was counterproductive, and as well as our drones attacks in Pakistan, that we're manufacturing more fundamentalist Muslim enemies than we're killing.
Definitely, I mean, it's useless. It's really utterly useless. Hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't give a damn about the money, but tens of thousands of American lives.
Right. Being sacrificed to make a bad situation worse. Right.
So, yes, I mean, so where can you, as far as I'm concerned, the life of an American soldier is equal to 10,000 Taliban anytime.
Yes.
If that sounds racist, well, I'm a racist, and I love it.
But we're sacrificing the lives of Americans and Brits to a large extent in the process of actually aiding and abetting the enemy. When you embrace Islam and you say that the problem is only these unique al-Qaeda-linked organizations, those men and women are not only dying in vain, what they're doing is counterproductive. They're making the situation worse.
You're right. There is no such thing as al-Qaeda. Every single breathing Muslim is al-Qaeda member. That's it.
Or the better way to say it is that al-Qaeda is irrelevant. Always has been irrelevant. Even to Osama bin Laden, al-Qaeda was irrelevant. Osama bin Laden never once cited al-Qaeda scripture. Never once said you need to die and go off as a terrorist on behalf of al-Qaeda. Never once. He never once touted himself. Everything that he said, everything that he believed, everything that he did was based upon the Quran and Hadith.
And he quoted the verses from the Quran and Hadith to justify them.
Of course.
I mean,
and he was right.
It's not a hidden agenda.
And he was right. Now, he was wrong in the sense that the Quran and Hadith are satanic, they're demented, they're violent, they're uncivilized. It's the dumbest religion ever conceived by man. So he's wrong in that everything Islam stands for is perverse. But he was right in the terms of he accurately reflected and communicated the true nature of the religion as it was revealed by Muhammad.
This is why I said he was the most perfect Muslim.
You're right.
Because he actually followed to the letter Muhammad's Sunnah and Muhammad's Quran. To the letter.
Yeah. We have Scott calling in from Wisconsin. He has a statement or question related to Islam. Go ahead, Scott. You're on with IQ al-Rassooli.
First of all, wow, man, I tell you what, I want to give congrats to both you and your gentlemen you have on today, first of all. I'm speaking on this thing because it's a stick of dynamite. Listen, you guys are hitting the head right on the nail. The bottom line is when you look towards that, the man up in the sky is Satan. And all it is, it's a Satan anniversary mulching machine that you dissected it, brother. I love it. And I went through this the second or two. You go in, you attack the Jew first, and then those mulching teeth come and say, we're coming after you, Christians. And I'll tell you what, you keep preaching on it, and it's not because of we don't love them, but it's because of an inbred mulching chewing machine inside these young men. And when you were saying you go into the Quran and you look at the 9th and the 5th, you're exactly right. There's no way to be a peaceful Muslim. I don't know if you guys saw that. I'll end it with this. The thing on CNN, I think it was a couple years ago, where this guy was strapped in that car with just metal. And the guy got in with him and said, why do you do this? In the name of Allah. He asked him again, why do you do this? In the name of Allah. And he asked him a third time. And he said, in the name of Allah. That's all he said. The cameraman got out. He goes down the road. Boom. Blows himself right up in the car. This is the situation like you were saying. Could you imagine standing at a coffee shop you're talking to your wife, and you're at peace, and all of a sudden something, you see pieces of meat go flying by you. Human meat.
And it's
really, really sad, brother. Thank you for taking my call, and I'll let you guys get on. So.
All right. Thank you. IQ, it's the reason that we speak out against Islam is twofold. I know I do it for two reasons. I suspect that you do it for two reasons. The first is that there are Muslims who know that there's something dreadfully wrong with their religion, and between your books and my books, we help them escape the religion of Islam. And the second, we know that for good Muslims, fundamentalist jihadist Muslims, there's no way to reason with them. And because there's no way to reason with them, all we can do is warn people about them. Because if you don't expose and condemn the religion of Islam, then the whole world will be slaughtered by this horrible religion. So it is really twofold. To help those who are willing to question their religion, and second of all, to spare those who will be slaughtered by this religion if we don't speak out against it.
Look, since Muslims have been spreading death and destruction all over the world in the name of Islam, and Islam is actually hate-mongering, intolerant, racist, misogynist, warmongering, duplicitous, vile, and it's totally ungodly. It is obviously... Well, it's obviously fully supported by the deafening silence of those so-called immense majority moderate Muslims who are not speaking out when their faith is allegedly being hijacked to slaughter humanity. But, you know, it's ironic. Muhammad always told his followers 1400 years ago, silence means consent. Nothing has changed.
Exactly. And the fact of the matter is that, you know, political correctness conveys this myth that we are being loving and compassionate when we're tolerant of everyone and accepting of everyone. But when you're accepting of and tolerant of something this destructive, something this deceitful, something this deadly as Islam is, then all you're doing is aiding and abetting the terror and the murder and the robbery and the rape of millions. You're the least compassionate person in the world if you're tolerant of Islam. You need to speak out. You need to have the courage to do what we're doing.
You're absolutely right. Look at the women's movement in America. In the 70s, they were burning their bras and their underpants. Why they were able to do it in America? Because of free society. They have been quiet. They haven't said a word for the last 40 years about 750 million women in Islam who are treated less than a domestic animal.
That is correct. And the fact that they aren't willing to speak out against Islam, it just tells you how pathetic they are, how immoral they are, how poorly informed they are, how little character they have. Because if you want to speak out on behalf of women's rights and you don't speak out against the number one enemy of women's rights in the world, Allah and Islam and Muhammad, then you are a complete immoral hypocrite.
And they really are complete immoral hypocrites. That's what they are.
Greedy and self-serving and not based upon a rational, intelligent view of the world. Islam is the most caustic dogma that has ever been perpetrated against women. Now, there's a reason for that. And the reason is that Muhammad realized that men were better fighters than women. And if you want men to fight for you, to rob for you, the best thing you can do is to give them total dominion over women. So if you can tell the man that your God has told you that men who fight for this religion can rape any woman they want, they can have any woman they want, that their wives and their daughters are their possessions to do whatever they want to, you know, you're going to get more men to act badly on your behalf.
But that's why there are 1,500 million Mohammedan Muslims. That is exactly why the Muslims in American prison system and the Muslims in the European prison system convert criminals faster than a Christian can save their lives or their souls.
Well, Christian can't save their souls because that religion is equally corrupt. But the fact of the matter is that with a Muslim, if a Muslim man rapes a Muslim woman, who goes to jail?
The Muslim woman.
Right.
Yeah.
She's the victim of the rape. That is Sharia.
Yeah.
And Sharia is based entirely on Muhammad's life. Was Muhammad himself a rapist?
He was a serial rapist. A serial rapist. 100% guaranteed.
In Islam, if a Muslim man commits pedophilia, who goes to jail, the victim or the perpetrator?
Always the victim.
And was
Sharia,
Muhammad
always the victim.
right? Was Muhammad a pedophile?
Well, if you call having sex with a girl of 9 when you are 53 is not pedophilia, I don't know what is.
And not just one, multiple girls that were under 10 years of age after he was in his mid-50s.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So Muhammad, his example is the basis of Syria, and yet he was a rapist, he was a pedophile, he was a thief, he was a terrorist, he was a mass murderer. How in the world can you have a legal system based upon the life and the words of perhaps the most vulgar man to have ever lived, and not have that legal system lead to a deplorable condition for all of those that it is used to control?
But that's why Muslim men are depraved. I'm not generalizing.
Yeah.
I'm saying it the way that they are depraved. They're immoral. They're unjust. They love hate. They love to hate. They love to subdue women. They love to massacre people who are not the same as their belief system. They are the replicas of Muhammad. They are the clones of Muhammad.
So can the situation in Syria be resolved so long as Islam is tolerated?
No chance in hell that it will be resolved.
Can the situation in Libya be resolved so long as Islam is tolerated?
Not at all. This is Islam the way it should be, killing each other. By the way, Islam hates every single human being on the planet. Why do I say that?
Including Muslims.
Shia say the Sunnis are kuffar, and the Sunnis say the Shia are kuffar.
Exactly.
And most
We'll
of
be
them say
back.
the others are kuffar. So nobody...
We'll be back. To Shattering Myths. We're having a discussion with IQ al-Rassooli. IQ, Jason, who is a frequent caller into our program from Toronto, a very well-read, well-spoken individual, has, I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but he wants to address the topic of moderate, and we'll put that in air quotes, Islam. Go ahead, Jason.
Thanks, Yada. Hi, IQ. Yeah, recently, I believe it was in Alberta here in Canada, they had, this lady had arranged to put up ads on the buses, which sort of was an outreach for girls in Muslim families that, didn't wish to be Muslims anymore.
Right, they're being abused. Right.
And so it was sort of like a call line where they could, reach out and maybe get help leaving their religion, which would probably mean, leaving their family and,
not probably.
Even changing their identity.
100% of Muslim girls that choose to leave Islam, their fathers and their brothers will hunt them, even their mothers will hunt them down and kill them.
Yeah. And, yeah, so obviously there's a need for that, and somebody out there is trying to reach out to them, and not surprisingly, there was some piece of garbage that complained, and eventually they caved and took them off, and
imagine that.
There's just the disgusting, and I thought to myself, like, what's with all the silence with all these so-called peaceful Muslims that that we just assume are ignorant, because they don't tell us what their prophet says. They don't really tell us what their book says. And you know what? They're pretty quiet when it comes to the slaughtering of Muslim children.
Yeah. My thinking...
And I think it speaks volumes. The silence speaks volumes about who these people actually are.
Yeah, Jason, my thought, and we'll get IQs here in just a second, is that just like there's a lot of nominal Christians out there that haven't got a clue what Paul actually wrote, who's the founder of their religion, there's a lot of nominal Muslims out there who just go through the motions. They were born a Muslim. They got no idea who Muhammad was, what he said, or what he did. They know less than 1/100th of 1% as much about Muhammad and Islam as IQ and I do. And so it is possible for an ignorant person who claims to be a Muslim to be a decent person and have no idea that their religion is the most despicable thing on the planet because they have chosen to be naive, ignorant. IQ, what do you think?
I agree with you, of course, but I'll tell you something else. Jason, it is not the fault of the Muslims. It is the fault of the Canadians who are not Muslims. It is the fault of the Americans who are not Muslims. It is the fault of the Europeans who are not Muslims who allow to be cowards, allow themselves to be cowards. Why should anybody please allow an advert that will save lives? I want to know. It's morally correct.
It's got to be more than it's got to be more than ignorance that would motivate them to kill their own children.
No. We're not discussing the Muslims. I'm saying that you, the Canadian public who are guilty for not objecting and not condemning the people who stop the advertising.
Right. And let me clarify something, Jason. The Muslims who will kill their own daughters are good Muslims. The Muslim mother, father, brother who will kill their own sister or own daughter, they're the good Muslims. The Muslims who stand by and allow it to happen, who just go along with their lives and pretend like their religion really isn't the sponsor of this kind of heinous behavior, they're the ones who are ignorant. Now, I don't look at ignorance as being an excuse. So if you're a person, you call yourself a Muslim, and you don't know what Muhammad said and did, you don't know that Islam is the most despicable religion and political scheme that has ever been perpetrated on humankind, shame on you. You've got no excuse. The truth is available. You have no excuse. You're not off the hook because you're stupid. You're not off the hook because you're apathetic. You're as guilty as the jihadist when you embrace a religion and you lie on behalf of it because you don't know what it's really about.
That is a big tragedy with, deception and evil in general has that destructive nature, because you don't have to be zealous about it. Your own ignorance can be almost as destructive.
I agree. Ignorance is extraordinarily destructive. IQ, I also want to completely agree with what you said. It is the responsibility of people who are not brainwashed by a religion as despicable as Islam to stand up, expose it, and condemn it for the sake of those that this religion terrorizes and murders the world over. IQ, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. I look forward to next week.
Bye-bye.